Good evening and welcome to the RCB Radio Sports Show. I'm Nicholas Rinn and I'm joined here tonight by Seamus Hayes and Owen Brennan, two renowned journalists who know everything there is to be known about sport really in County Clare and beyond. And it's just after the weekend where we had a pulsating Munster final played out in Thurles. It ended in a draw, went to extra time. Limerick got the better of Clare by 3 points at extra time, 129 to 29 points. Seamus, you're a veteran, if you don't mind me saying it, of Munster finals. You've seen a lot of them down through the years. Tell me what you thought of this one.
It was a fantastic occasion. Obviously, disappointment at the end that Clare were at the wrong end of the result. The nearest to it of all the Clare Munster finals that I've seen, and I saw my first Clare Munster final in '67. The nearest to it in terms of atmosphere was '78. In Thurles, when the ground was buzzing that day as well, and because there were high hopes that Clare were going to win. But last Sunday, fantastic occasion, fantastic atmosphere, great buzz around the place from early that morning. Just obviously little disappointment at the end that the result didn't go Clare's way, but they have nothing to, we'll say, they have no reason to be down. It was a fantastic performance. There was nothing between the teams. Obviously, the one or two small things, I suppose, swung the wrong way and just edged Limerick, who are, it has to be said, a fantastic power in hurling at the moment, powerful team, and a little bit of greater experience, I suggest, probably just carried the day for them. But a great occasion. Clare are still very well in the running for honours. Who's to say that this won't be the All-Ireland pairing next month? You just don't know, but because you're at the business end of the competition now and there's some great teams left. But last Sunday was a fantastic occasion, one that anybody that was lucky enough to witness, I'd say, will never forget.
I suppose when we sort of settle down, the high of being down there and the high of the whole game, the Tony Kelly line ball, everything, brought us to such a high. But when we settled down on Monday, we looked at it. I have the feeling that we're, Limerick are four times Munster champions now, and they've won 3 All-Irelands in the last 4 years. We could say we're in the par. We drew them 3 times. Okay, the first time Limerick didn't put out a very strong team, but we drew with them twice in the championship now, and amazingly the score was exactly the same the last day as it was in the game in Innis. So to be up in a pair with the All-Ireland champions is a great place to be, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's obviously fantastic. And, from a position where not that long ago, less than 2 months ago, that the predictions were that Clare and Tipperary would be battling for the bottom spot in Munster. I saw an article today rating the remaining 6 teams in the championship, and Clare were rated number 2. Just in a couple of weeks' time, how things have changed. I suppose it's an indication of the confidence that's within the Clare camp at the moment. And, they're absolutely buzzing. They're not fearing anybody. They didn't fear Limerick last week. Limerick were a powerful team. Obviously, it would have been great to have won it, not alone just to have won the title, a Munster title that we don't have too many of, but it would have shortened the season, I suppose, because fellas could do with a break, and that's the one concern I'd have heading into next week's quarter-final against Wexford or Kerry. How much did last Sunday take out of Clare? They put in a massive effort. We had a couple of fellas that weren't able to finish the game. Will they be okay? Paul Flanagan, Tony Kelly, and there were fellas who did finish the game, but who shipped some very heavy knocks during the game. So I suppose all that will be a consideration for next week. But Brian Lohan and his management team have produced the goods up to now. When things weren't expected, they produced the answers and they bounced back, and they made the changes that many of us might have questioned. We might have said so-and-so isn't good enough for here or there, and we were proved wrong all the time. So they know what they're about, it seems, and they have fellas in great shape. And the longer, I suppose, Clare stay in the championship, the greater the chances of more of the fellas who have missed games due to injury, the greater the chance that they will be back. And obviously, Mark Rogers came back the last day. Aidan McCarthy can't be hopefully too far away, in the next couple of weeks if Clare can manage to stay going. hopefully he might be able to play some part. So all that will help. But right now, Clare, despite the disappointment of just not getting over the line last week, they are in a very good place. And I suppose one other thing, Limerick were, I suppose, if there is such a thing, that bit extra determined last week to become the first holders of the new McMackey Cup, given that he was such a great hurler with Limerick. And I suppose that was another driving force. But, there's nothing between, and I think John Kiley said that after, that there's nothing between the two teams.
Yeah, John Kiley was pretty generous in his analysis of the game after, which was refreshing as well when you saw what happened in the Leinster after the Leinster final. I suppose, but we're not going to go into that. Owen, what do you think is the key factor, if there is a key factor? What are the factors that have brought this Clare team from being non-contenders over the last couple of years to be in the position they're in?
I would safely say, without sounding like too much of my own opinion, but I would safely say it was Limerick that drove Clare on to this level. I think when Brian Lohan came in first, there was very few of us in Thurles that night in 2020, and very privileged to be there during the COVID and all that. But I think it was an eye opener that second half to Brian Lohan. That just when you see it firsthand against your own team, when you see what you have, and you see how far Limerick have come, considering that we had beaten them in 2018 on their way to the All-Ireland and beaten them handsomely, and suddenly just less than 2 years later, they were streets ahead of everyone else in the country. So for that turnaround, I think that was an eye-opener to Brian Lohan at the time. I think more so in strength and conditioning. I think skill-wise and all that, we'd have always fancied ourselves against Limerick. I think the big thing was the strength and conditioning, and I think from that moment on, it was Brian Lohan's determination to play catch-up, which isn't easy. This Limerick team had been building strength and conditioning-wise over since, from their underage system. It's been a very strong underage system. Anthony Daly and all them were involved in it at the time. So they came through and they were incrementally building up that. So we were playing catch-up to a large extent. And I think this is the first year that we haven't gone into it being that kind of physically inferior. And I think that kind of stood to them. I think they knew they had the skill. They knew they had the players to match them. I think we fleshed out our options as well. The couple of young lads that have come in the last couple of years, from what you talked to with the experienced players, I think they're really, really refreshed by their enthusiasm, the energy, the things that young guys bring. And I think there's so much promise there. Even though maybe physically they're not ready for the likes of the Limerick yet. It just makes the whole package very, very enticing for Clare. And I think the players that were fringe players when Brian Lohan came in are now leaders, along with the guys that were always leaders, the John Conlons and the Tony Kellys were always leaders, no matter if they were 19 or 29. I think it's the fringe players that have made themselves the ones of the first names on the team sheet, and probably close enough to being on the team sheet for All-Stars at this stage, and that have really made the difference. I think the Dave Fitzgeralds, the Ryan Taylors, those kind of player, Paul Flanagan, guys that have just really transformed themselves into key players, crucial players, you'd say, in this team. It has become such a unit now. It's just so encouraging, even though, there was that deflation after the final whistle on Sunday.
Yeah, I suppose looking at the game itself and looking at Limerick where they won the game, Seamus Flanagan came up with 8 points. I mean, Clare will be disappointed with that one player can get 8 points. Apart from that, their full back line didn't give nothing to our full forward line really, and that's for the second day in a row, you could say, that the full forward line. And I'm not picking on the lads because they're putting in a super effort, but I think they were the two areas. Flanagan up front, no, he wasn't on his own. Aaron Gillane was quiet, but he got the 3 points at the end as well. Kyle Hayes was well held. Tom Morrissey just got the 2. Carl O'Neill got 2. So, and Gerard Hegarty did nothing apart from get the great goal that he got as fair goal.
I think we're Clare, realise now that, they kind of, Flanagan kind of fell under the radar, if you know what I mean. That I think the concentration obviously was on Aaron Gillane and Conor Cleary. That was from a long way out, going back to their league encounter, with Gillane being sent off and stuff like that. But I think the concentration was on him and Kyle Hayes. And, it was kind of like Flanagan was roaming in and out there they kind of, maybe didn't anticipate, because he'd only come back from injury, didn't exactly play well in the group game against Clare. So I think he was a massive bonus for Limerick. And you're right to say at the other end we didn't get much change out of their full back line. Okay, they couldn't handle Tony Kelly, but they haven't done in the last 3 games anyway. They David Fitzgerald did so well, but they've held Shane O'Donnell and Peter Duggan scoreless from play in the 2 games that they've played against Clare. So that in itself is a major feat, because those 2 players have been phenomenal for us this year, but they're the only 2 games that they haven't scored from play. So if you're to meet him again, you'd say that the motivation is there for those 2 players in particular. While it's not all about scores, they obviously do a lot of donkey work, and Shane O'Donnell and Peter Duggan work hard and throw their body in the line and all that. But they're inspirational players too. And if they could just chip in with a couple of points, obviously that would have been the difference on Sunday with getting over the line. Shane O'Donnell probably had her only goal chance as well that was blocked. And Peter Duggan just couldn't get that. I think he caught one ball, but he kind of threw it up straight away rather than trying to make space. So I think we've areas there that we can improve on, but you'd have to say that Limerick's defence is phenomenal. And look, they have been over the last couple of years anyway.
Yeah, Seamus, I don't think Aaron Shannon was fit. He wasn't on the panel. I think somebody said he cracked a rib there earlier on in the campaign. He would have been a huge man to be able to bring in, and we might have to look to bring him in the full forward line just yet. He would be the man that would hold the ball and catch the ball.
Yeah, I suppose, on his day, he has done that in the past. As I said, he wasn't on the match day panel last week, so he must have been carrying some type of knock, or there must have been some reason for that. I suppose every game is a little different. Limerick are such seasoned campaigners now, and they have a powerful defence. It's going to take a massive, massive effort to break down that defence. And while we won great ball outfield, and obviously they weren't able to handle Tony Kelly, but apart from that, our forward line didn't really threaten. The threat came from David Fitzgerald and Ryan Taylor out around the middle of the field, and from John Conlon coming out from centre back, and David McInerney. So they're going to have to, I suppose, look at things. But I think that the one thing that has stood out for me in recent weeks is that Brian Lohan and his management team kind of play the players that are on form. Fellas that played a couple of weeks ago in the round robin game weren't even on the panel last week, and they were playing with their clubs last Saturday night, a couple of players. So obviously, I suppose it's an amateur game at the end of the day, and fellas do suffer lapses in form, and it's hard to, I suppose, to keep it going all the time. So, but they have been fairly good at picking the fellas who are on form for the different games. So obviously they'd be hoping, I said, that Shanahan would be in a position to play some part the next day. I suppose the other plus now is that Mark Rogers came on for the latter part of the game, the last day. That should bring him on. Hopefully there'll be no further injuries, and that should bring him on to play a greater part the next day. A player of a lot of talent, and then we're playing Wexford or Kerry, and obviously the odds say it will be Wexford. You can't take anything for granted, but you'll be surprised if it isn't Wexford. But they're going to be tough nut to crack as well. After their I suppose let off, I suppose, if you like, having drawn with Westmeath, they bounced back, with an impressive win over Wexford to get back into the championship. And they've had no game last week, and like last week's game, was like 2 games for Clare to so hard, and there was so much involved. But the other side of that is it is better than 9 or 10 training sessions. So you'd expect that with proper rest, which I have no doubt the Clare lads will have been given this week, and that they'll be bouncing fit again next week, and it'll be interesting to see. I don't expect too many changes from the team to play the Leicester, unless there's somebody ruled out through injury. I'd expect it to maybe along the same lines again. So.
Yeah. And Owen, I suppose this week there'll be no training done, and maybe next week as well, like coming up into the game, which we're assuming Wexford, but Kerry might have a say in it just yet, and whatever we meet anyway, it's going to be a huge task. I know today is Thursday. I'm still tired. Just a supporter up in the stand. I was wrecked. So you can imagine what way on Monday and Tuesday even. So you can imagine for the effort the players come in. Is 2 weeks? Will they be back up in time? Will they put this behind them?
Look, that's the hope. I mean, the case study really is the minors. I know they're younger. They maybe obviously not as experienced as the senior players, but it was only when the minors played Galway in that All Ireland quarter-final series against Galway, and that was 10 days after that Munster final, that they realised that how much that the Munster final and the manner of it, the extra time and the deflation of the penalties actually affected the players, mentally, physically. They were just drained. So that is the worrying thing. And thankfully, the minors came back to form against Laois, but Clare in the seniors don't have that option. It's going to be knockout from here on in. I think the major plus for Clare, even though, the big disappointment about the Limerick thing is that we still kind of flew under the radar, even though we knew, what a good team we had. But even though it got to a Munster final, it was still being a major surprise if Clare had won the game. So I think it was kind of an ambush that was working for a while. And if we'd pulled it off, would have been obviously so sweet. But the fact that you try and take down a champion and you miss, there is that kind of shot that there's no more element of surprise. As Trapattoni would have said, the cat is out of the sack, or whatever way he put it.
That's
But
right.
the good thing for Clare is that in previous Munster championships, when they went out and had to go through the qualifier route, they had 2 or 3 games. And last year, looked at 4 or 5 games on the trot. Every week they were out. Didn't matter. Keep going, keep going. If you keep winning, you're out the following week. So I think the fact that they have the 2 weeks now, even though it's going to be a small bit of recovery, I think is a good thing for Clare to regroup. And then they'd have 2 weeks to the semi-final again. I think that's just that better route that they're getting, rather than the starting qualifiers where they were going 3 or 4. If you remember 2020 and 2021, Clare had 4 weeks in a row where they were just playing week after week. And it was kind of a punishment to go through the qualifier system. So I think, if we're ever going to get a better chance at it, I think this would be the year to try and make that breakthrough. But it's going to be a potential banana skin. Someone asked me last night, actually, when are they going? Why haven't they fixed the game against Wexford? I said because Wexford aren't exactly in it yet. That they have to play Kerry, so we don't want to fall into that trap either. Kerry are playing at home in Austin Stack Park. Wexford obviously will be favourites or hot favourites going into it, but we can't presume anything. And I think it'll be interesting to see how that game goes from the Wexford perspective, because they've had a bit of up and down form so far.
Yeah. I suppose just to finish up on the Munster final, we can't pass everything that can be said has been said about Tony Kelly. Everything and anything, and he's got Hurler of the Week. I presume an All-Star on the way, probably, and a good chance for Player of the Year. But when the game was over in normal time, we got a line ball, and Tony Kelly didn't even hesitate. He just picked up the ball and placed it. It was Peter Duggan's to take. But he did, he's the man that he is. He just took responsibility. He had about 5 foot, I reckon, looking at it to aim it and to cut that ball over the bar. I mean, what could you say about a man like that, Owen?
Yeah, look, I think you run out of superlatives for Tony Kelly. As a man said to me in the toilet, now that doesn't have any consequence really, but in Semple Stadium. What are we doing with the statue of Icarus when we haven't one built for Tony Kelly, and Icarus didn't even play a senior for Clare? Look, I mean, he's a phenomenal talent. We have never seen his like before, and I doubt we'll ever see his like again. Well, we won't maybe anyway. And that's the mark of the man. He had gone from the freeze, even at that stage, but hadn't taken a line ball. And looking back over the records, for all his scoring feats, and he's Clare's all-time scorer, he'd only ever scored one sideline in the championship. So to step up to that with such pressure, obviously there was people jeering him behind. That's commonplace. He's inside between the 20-meter line and the 13-meter line. Someone threw whatever they threw at him, everything that came at him, and still put it over the bar. I mean, that epitomizes Tony Kelly, what he means to Clare. his leadership, and it's why Brian Lohan recognised his captain's leadership and making him captain. You know, I mean, if Brian Lohan makes you captain, it's a fair testament to you as a character of a player, because he was a fair man himself when lining out for Clare. So, look, I don't know what more you can say about Tony Kelly. He's got 46 points against Limerick in 3 championship games. No other player has done that in this great Limerick era. That's an average of 15 points a game. So, you know, he's a law unto himself. And look, we're so lucky that he is from Clare, and it's a privilege, no matter what county he's from, to watch him play at any day, whether it's club, county, all the way up along. He's just been a pleasure to watch.
Absolutely. Mention the statues. They're putting the Pucan up in the Michael Cusick Centre up in Cairn. I've a funny feeling the Pucan could be Tony Kelly. But we'll leave it there for the Munster Championship. We'll look forward to. We'll wait and see who will play it, whether it's Wexford or Kerry, and we'll talk about it at a future date. But there was a great match played out, Seamus, in Cusick Park on Saturday. Clare had a fantastic win over Meath in the qualifiers, and you know, Colin Collins, you could see his delight after the game. You know, it was a really hard fought game, and they came out the right side of it.
Yeah, it was a fantastic result and fully merited. You know, let me say, maybe we made hard work of it, and there were times maybe in the final quarter when we might have felt that it isn't going to go our way. But overall, Clare were the better team. They created a better number of chances, and you know, they didn't panic. And when the pressure came on, the team in stood up, and you know, it was a superb finish. You know, I suppose both sides found it hard to play actually with the breeze, and both sides had the greater number of misses with the breeze. And the first 10 minutes of the second half, I remember making a note. By the 10 minutes of the second half, Clare had kicked 4 fairly easy wides. You know, there were easy scoring chances, and they had missed the 4 of them. And you know, we began to wonder, is this going to be our day? And then failing to score from the penalty, even though it was a very well hit penalty. Now, you'd have to say Harry Hogan, the Meath goalkeeper, had proven himself again. You know, he's been outstanding throughout the summer. But I thought, you know, it was a little harsh on the way David Tubridy was directed to go to the sideline and change his jersey. You know, you're stepping up to a crucial penalty at a time, you know, in the game when anything was going to, a small thing was going to swing the game, and he was directed to the sideline to change his jersey. But anyhow, look at, we got over that, came back, and Keelan Sexton, great to see him back. You know, he had been a loss due to injury, kicked a great 45. To put Clare a point up, and then Doherty capped a fantastic performance when he came upfield from cornerback to kick the insurance point, if you like. So it was a great result, and one that Clare deserved against Meath, because you know there have been tight contests between them in recent years, but invariably Meath finished a point ahead in a couple of the last meetings. So Clare were overdue, if you like, a win against the Royal County, and it was superb. You know, you're into next round of the qualifier on Saturday against Roscommon. Clare have played them before. They beat them in the qualifiers back. It was in 2018 or 2016. That Clare beat them in the qualifiers and went on to get to the quarter final that year, where they, you know, put up a great performance against a fancied Kerry team. So you know, they're in a good position. Delighted for them that they kind of got back, because there was a bit of downer after losing to Limerick in the first round of the championship in that penalty shootout. You know, penalty shootouts are becoming more common, I suppose, by the day now. And you know, it was very disappointing to lose that game, because there had been high hopes of Clare getting to the Munster final this year. But I think that's the real credit to this crowd, the way they bounced back and the way they were, you know, they were focused on last week's game. And you know, I'm really looking forward to Saturday's game against Roscommon. And while the pundits will be making Roscommon favourites, you know, Clare have proven in the past that they're capable of matching Roscommon and beating Roscommon. So I'd hold out great hope of a win on Saturday.
Yeah. Owen, do you think they can have a good cut off Roscommon? I think they beat them a few years ago in the qualifier up in Pearse Stadium, if my memory serves me right.
Yeah, they did a great occasion. They had a great qualifier run that year. I remember big celebration in Sligo on the pitch afterwards, and then down to Salt Hill. Mick Bowen was involved in them at the time. It was a build on from the league promotion that year, actually, that was also played in Croke Park against Kildare that they won. So they were on that bit of a bounce. It was a phenomenal year, and it just kept on rolling. Unfortunately, met Kerry in that quarter final, but I think, back in Croke Park is fantastic. I know, look, the travelling and the expense for families is a little bit tricky. And I don't know if the team are staying over, but the hotel rooms, I just hope they don't hire a car. They could be bankrupt. But Clare have only played 3 previous championship games in Croke Park in their history, and going back to 1917. So, it's phenomenal to get that opportunity for a lot of younger players that wouldn't have played in Croke Park before. Look, they can have a right go at it because, as Seamus said, Roscommon will be favourites. When we beat them in 2016, they were a Division 1 side. They're back being promoted now as a Division 1 side again, and Division 2 champions. So they will be the favourites undoubtedly going into it. So Clare can just have a go, really. They're not expected to win. It's a day out as such in Croke Park, and they certainly have the capability, the personnel, and the nous to get over the line. So I think it's a dangerous position for Roscommon, who will be going into it, coming off the back of that Connacht final defeat, where they would hope to have done the treble over Galway, which would have been a big result for them. But now that they're off the back of a defeat themselves, Clare have got that, let's say, dirty diesel out of their system now, and they're back on the winning ways, which, that's their first championship win in 4 years. So they can have a right go at this now. They have the personnel, they have the experienced players that are there. So there's no reason why they can't really have a cut at it and throw everything at Roscommon. And who knows, hopefully we can get over the line with it.
Absolutely. So we'll leave it there at that one. But just Seamus, the Camogie, the Camogies, if it wasn't for bad luck, I suppose they wouldn't have any this year. They were just pipped by Wexford again in 6 Mile Bridge on Saturday, I think it was. It set them back. They're going to have to win their next 2 games. Yeah,
they're going to have to win their next 2 games. And after what we saw in Thurles last week, Waterford won't be any pushover. I was very impressed by Waterford last week in their win over Tipperary. So, I suppose the good thing is Clare have a break this weekend, because they had been on with the league, and the way the league went to a replay and extra time and everything against Cork. I think that it took a bit more out of the squad than maybe they would have expected. And, the last 4 or 5 weeks, they've had a lot of tough games, and a lot has gone into it. So from that point of view, I think it was great to have a break this week. But they're going to have to step up now. They have the games at home, what's left, the 2 games. They're going to have to win those to have any chance of qualifying. And, it will be a big downer if they don't qualify for the knockout stage. Like, this is the big target at the start, and it's going to be tough, and they'll be depending on other results now at this stage. But the first thing is they have to win their 2 games at home now. That's the bottom line, and hopefully with a week's break that they will get back to the form that they showed against Cork in that league final, because they are capable of being in the concluding stages of the competition.
Yeah. And they have made a lot of strides in the Camogie in recent times, and having those draws with Tipperary and eventually beating them and going toe to toe with Cork, just proves that they have really come on in leaps and bounds in the last few years, really, and in particular this year.
No, absolutely, and it's just a great pity, I suppose, the squad wasn't as deep as previous years, and I know they're balancing the junior as well there. They made great strides, but unfortunately, having to play 6 weeks in a row is going to be an arduous schedule for anyone. I mean, Brian Lawn was, they got rid of the 3 weeks in a row of playing the hurling championship this year. So can you imagine having to play? Imagine if Brian Lawn's reaction if he had to play 6 championship games in a row. Sure.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to expect that the players, and they were just going, like, if you met any of the players, they were literally going to the sea, trying to recover every week, just trying to keep their touch in. There was no great training in it. They just had to try and freshen up, keep the muscles and the and the aches and pains down as much as they could to go on to the next game. I mean, that's not fair on players. And if they're to miss out, they look back on that and say, should we have gone as heavy on the Munster Championship? But in saying that, if they hadn't done as well in the Munster Championship, it mightn't have buoyed them on for the All Ireland. But look, that's only a conversation to have at the end of the campaign. They still have 2 games left. As Seamus said, now they'll have a long way to break. They have a fortnight between the Wexford and the Dublin and Waterford games. So very important for them now to get back to winning ways as quickly as possible. They need the 2 wins badly now, and hope that the results go their way.
Absolutely. Just Seamus there, I think the ladies footballers are playing at the weekend. Are they playing in Croke Park this weekend?
And Croke Park on Sunday, isn't it, against Louth? Against Louth, yeah. And they have a good win under their belts from Newry, where they beat down a couple of weeks ago. So, a win this week should see them progress to the quarterfinals of the championship.
Yeah, so all going well there, and hopefully they'll
all going well with home advantage, and hopefully they'll get a big following out there on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's about it for this week, lads. Seamus and Owen, thanks very much for joining me here tonight on the RCB radio show, and this will be going out live on Friday evening on RCB radio. And thanks, lads, for coming on board. I'm sure you're fairly tired after the events of the weekend as well, and we're just coming back to normal again, and we look forward to the rest of the summer. Thanks, lads.
No problem. All right. Yes. See you.
Thanks, lads.